This is Dr. Justina Agnieszka Chevalier. This video, my name, actually, the family maiden name is Włodarczyk. And Włodarczyk is the name of my father, my mother's married name. She accepted legally his name for 35 years and continued using that name after his death. And because she loved him dearly, actually, that was political marriage in many ways during communist regime. However, that marriage was in greatest fondness of one another, despite of many, disputes and doubts and things like that. And so that is why, because that marriage is no longer the case on a personal grounds, please do refrain from attacks on my mother, my brother, and also my mother's family or stepfathers in defense of or in some sort of because that appeared to be the case at some point to me, in some sort of attempts to return me there, to care for her, because that is not her in explicit pursuit of personal freedom or wish, being married to someone else and also being a lawyer. My mother is a lawyer. I state my name, maiden one, not necessarily because of some sort of personal fondness for it, but I often sign art with that name and use modified to my handwriting signature of my father, because I actually studied law, for instance, under that name, and also my medical diploma from Mexico, as well as my first attempt on that revalidation of medical credentials in the United States, and I've tried also have not finished in some other countries because of demand for work of different nature. That diploma was signed as Justyna Włodarczyk Wojtowicz, which is the maiden name of my mother, though she does not use it, and a custom in Mexico. And so those are names that show what it is that I present with myself as formal, and as well as based on fondness, non-formal, which is not the Mexican education. Diplomas are internationally recognized. Education. Non-formal education does not mean necessarily an education that is derived from an institution. It may mean that it's derived from an institution like such as university, or some sort of other private or public organization, or a teacher that issues such certificates, or agency that does that. It means simply that informal means I needed to perform work based on demand or predictions of such demand, such and such education. And I obtained it by myself doing active research and notes and writings, or I went to a given place and obtained such. And so that is why, again, my formal education, an example of that is one that is finished and per laws, international ones, at least in one country valid, and that is medical education. I'm a physician to start with. Second, formal education, though it does not lead to a diploma, is an education obtained from the Maternal-Fetal Institute, which is a state or federal agency, as a agency that provided funding for me, and is called Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental and Related Disorders, and is now and was now per classes and per also practicums unlimited associated with my mentor's licenses of diverse, not only medical, scope of being able to attend patients as a trainee, or later on as vested into trusts, practitioner. It is considered formal, even though it does not end anywhere in a diploma. And it was a long-term training, and I obtained such and can use it working as with clients, because we talk about multidisciplinary approach here with adults and with children. I have an extended, in comparison to other trainings, knowledge on medicine, though that was also meant and is meant to, in offerings to me of residency programs, to waive, for instance, the disability aspects, including up to 2 years of neuroscience in clinical settings and in research settings in residency if I decided to pursue such education, as opposed to being, well, a university professor or a lecturer at different, not only university levels. And also it is extended because of that last name Włodarczyk to law. Law in context of human rights and also animal rights, as well as to administration, because I studied that in formal, renowned, internationally recognized, internationally in some rankings, University of Warsaw, in capital of Poland. Though I did not want to finish and continue it somewhere else or there, formal classes do not constitute formal education. So sometimes in language we call it formal. No, I am not a lawyer. And for those who from Mexico or from places where in vocabulary the word advocate means a formal legal representative, that is not the case. In comparison to a person who trained me, the man called Big Wolf, whose name I don't remember anymore, or NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and other charitable organizations, in specifically patient advocacy in the United States, I do have much more, however, formal preparation and in-depth knowledge in long hours, in years and years of preparation for legal studies, and during my legal studies that add to about 2 years out of 5 years, and then postgraduate up to 3 years, I do have more of the credentials to show for myself, because it is possible to verify, to explain nuances of law, constitution, national or international ones, because I did take also classes from a lawyer who was a federal agent in the United States and traveled to the United States, retired as a professor, to impart classes. That was my elective, and give me classes on human rights and on nuances of protesting in English and many other things. So you see, I did make an effort to learn about the United States legal system, apart from studying United States Constitution as in-depth as Constitution of France, England, and of course a bit less than Constitution of Poland and Polish system, and such administration, as well as history and nuances of history, though United States history in legal studies often past certain age has emphasis on structures. So structures of how government is formed, how government was slowly elected, structures of and different conflicts of including reservations versus the non-free, meaning institutionalized system of the United States. And so all of those in so-called academic codex, which I don't have with me, but is possible to obtain emailing or mailing my what's called alma mater. Sometimes it is to university that graduated, sometimes like for instance in cases of some politicians, university that imparted informal curriculum in hopes of graduating, or in informal curriculum preparation for a person who then performed per demand right away based on that functions, different functions. So I am human rights activist with extended in medicine and also in law knowledge in comparison to other graduates per past education and personal interest. Like I mentioned, I'm from quite political family in Poland, and my mother is or was a lawyer. I now would like to discuss after that a what it is, because sometimes it's not clear, not only in posters and in agendas, but also not very clear as it was told to me sometime, and also my observation, because we are often meant to, being submerged in that rat race to take standardized tests. What it is that liberal versus conservative trends, in particular in the United States, mean and plan, and what they actually differ in. But do such not reading to you a book or a Google or Wikipedia or some other source, but in my own vocabulary in language, because of my prior preparation, explain that to you as to the best of my knowledge, so that you have a flexible understanding and know how to interpret what you read. And I encourage you at any age right now, and wherever it is or whoever it is that you are or you are at location wise, to also do the following: take books, read about it, take also internet and to read about it and investigate what books say, but with gray of skepticism and without memorizing at first. I encourage you not to memorize first, and listen simply to those videos and read those footnotes if you use those, because if you memorized only in high school, primary school, from parents or on spare time, certain things as facts, and even though you obtained good grades and can restate that to me or to teachers or on test, it sometimes is that you cannot understand the social context of that knowledge, and you do not have a capacity to, in utmost understanding, interpret press, interpret teachers and books, and also form independent judgments or create independent free writings or speeches like I do, because it requires understanding that is personal. So do seek personal points of reference for yourself, as well as by observing others. And so looking for those personal references in persons of different age, in different situations, as well as persons, and also in some cases animals, because in all plants, who described those as diaries, or as sometimes provocations, but sometimes also recordings that are emotional in nature, and seek in such knowledge about things that you have not experienced, or things that you predict you may have experienced, or things that you have had in the past experience but you forgot about or interpreted in a different light. And then when that, for instance, I often like being trained in evidence-based medicine at my medical school, which is Universidad of Monterrey. I like often the approach that was promoted by some of my teachers of skim read the material assigned to you or that you found first, and then when you have that prior reading, prior imagination, then listen to my videos and go back to it with a pencil or a pen, and on a piece of paper make out of it your own notes, not the ones that are prepared by somebody else, because those we memorize and we don't have that in-depth knowledge. Like I told one of my students at the University of Texas, we have to have a faith that at some point education ends in having experts. So a medical student is expected to take prior to and as opposed to any sort of memorization or guessing. Take any source, any material of knowledge, read it, be able to form criticism on, be it good or bad one, because you need to know that criticism can be positive, meaning something that documents or article says is true, one agrees with it, or is useful, one finds it useful, as opposed to criticism means it needs some improvements, and interpret all criticism as a need of improvement without